It's time for our college football Week 9 Saturday selections. Our upset pick of the week to kick things off. Minnesota on the road in Iowa City. The Hawkeyes 7-point home favorites. Well, Iowa's been inconsistent at times this season, and they're going up against a good Minnesota defense. I like the Gophers to cover the 7 on the road. Now we move on to our main picks of the week. Michigan State heads to Evanston to take on Northwestern. 3:30 Eastern kick on ESPN. Sparty, a 2.5-point road favorite. Michigan State is somehow 6-1, but man, they certainly haven't looked like a 6-1 team in the process of getting there, but they continue to find ways to win. I think they do that again here, led by their defense, Michigan State, by 4. Texas Tech travels to Norman to face Oklahoma. The Sooners are 20-point home favorites in primetime on ABC. Well, the Baker Mayfield Bowl awaits as Mayfield has led the Sooners to over 60 points in his first 2 matchups against his former team. I expect another big performance from Mayfield in the Sooners offense against an awful Red Raiders passing D, Oklahoma by 23. Fireworks are expected in Morgantown as Oklahoma State visits West Virginia. 8-point road favorites, noon kick on ESPN. Well, both sides love to throw the football down the field. Mason Rudolph and Will Grier, they throw excellent deep balls, and they're just 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country. Both teams only have 1 conference loss, so the winner will remain very much in the thick of the Big 12 conversation, while the loser is going to need a lot of help. I expect a close game, and I'm going with Oklahoma State by a field goal. TCU heads to play Iowa State in Ames, 3:30 on ESPN. The Horned Frogs, 6.5-point favorites. If you had said at the beginning of the season that this would be a big game, I'd have said you were crazy. But here we are with Iowa State controlling their Big 12 destiny and Kenny Hill leading an unbeaten TCU squad. The key here is, can Kenny Hill take care of the football against an opportunistic Iowa State defense that does a good job of forcing turnovers? I believe he will, so I'm going TCU by a field goal, but if he turns the football over here, look out. Vanderbilt heads to Columbia to take on South Carolina. The Gamecocks, 6.5-point home favorites. Well, South Carolina's defense hasn't allowed more than 400 yards in a game over their last 5 contests. Vandy has struggled against good defenses all season long. South Carolina at home wins this one by double digits. Tennessee heading to Kentucky. Tennessee is a 3.5-point road underdogs. This one kicks off under the lights in primetime. Well, my oh my, must how Rocky Top feel. They're underdogs against a Kentucky program that at one point they won 30-31 against. The thing here, can the Vols finally win an SEC game? I think with Kentucky struggling to stop the run the last 2 games, the Vols, even without John Kelly, will find a way to win this one with their defense, their running game, and maybe, just maybe, a little something from the gutsy redshirt freshman, Jarrett Guarantano, who really did a good job of hanging in there against an Alabama team that really beat it to the ground. Mississippi State heads to College Station for a primetime SEC West showdown against Texas A&M. The Bulldogs, 2.5-point road favorites. Well, this begins a make-or-break stretch for Aggies coach Kevin Sumlin, whose teams always seem to fade down the stretch. It feels different this time, though. This is a much younger Aggies team. Something about the youth and this is a naive, a young Aggies football team. I think this team comes to play in this one. Their defense is going to force a turnover or 2 in the second half. I'm rolling with the Aggies in an upset by a field goal at home. Georgia and Florida square off in Jacksonville with the Bulldogs at 13.5-point favorite. This is a 3:30 kick, the SEC on CBS. Well, this is a veteran-laden Georgia team that's going to come into this game with 3 years of frustration built up against the Gators. Florida's offensive line has its issues, and against the Georgia team that wins the line of scrimmage, I have to go with Georgia by 21. Now to the Pac-12, Utah at Oregon. The Utes, a field goal favorite in Eugene. Well, Utah's run defense done just enough. They're a good run defense on the season, ranked in the 30s. I think they do enough in this one to contain Oregon's rushing attack, and a Ducks team that hasn't been competitive since losing quarterback Justin Herbert drop another one here to Utah. Utah in this one by a touchdown. UCLA at Washington. The Huskies, 17.5-point home favorites. Well, UCLA, they haven't been a good road team all season, particularly in terms of taking care of the football when they're on the road. Washington defense, I think, forces a few turnovers. Washington plays a complete offensive game. I'm going Washington by 20 at home over the Bruins. How things have turned for the Trojans. USC heads to Tempe to take on Arizona State. Some Pac-12 after dark on ESPN. The Trojans only a 3.5-point favorite. Well, the news came across today. No Christian Rector for the Trojans. Another big loss along that defense for USC. The Trojans' season and possibly Clay Helton's job are on life support. I picked USC to win the national championship before the season, and even with all of these devastating injuries on defense and along that offensive line, I'm riding with USC through thick and thin. Trojans by 4 here. They at least stay in control of the Pac-12 South, but really making this pick with no confidence whatsoever. I just think Sam Darnold back against the wall. Trojans find a way. USC by 4 in the desert. Another game in the state of Arizona. Washington State visits Tucson to face Arizona. The Cougars are 2-point road favorites. Well, Khalil Tate has somehow turned Arizona's fortunes around. This is going to be an interesting clash of styles, with Wazoo trying to throw the football all over the field and Arizona trying to run it. I think Washington State does just enough defensively to squeak out a 5-point win. To the ACC we go. Miami at North Carolina. The Hurricanes, 20.5-point road favorites. Well, it seems like 20.5 is a lot for a Miami team that typically plays close games. But keep in mind, UNC on defense has been absurdly bad this season. They really missed the coaching of Gene Chizik. And offensively, the Tar Heels still haven't settled on a quarterback. We're almost 2/3 of the way through this season, and North Carolina still doesn't have a quarterback. They played 3 quarterbacks last week, got routed at Virginia Tech. Miami's going to stay unbeaten in this one. The question is by how much. I have Miami by 24 in Chapel Hill. Our next one up, Duke at Virginia Tech. The Hokies, 15.5-point home favorites. This a night game in Blacksburg. Enter Sandman, anyone. Well, Duke hasn't been all that good this season, and the Hokies are a team that is capable of beating you in all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. Tech quarterback Josh Jackson has done a good job of taking care of the football this season. So at night, under the lights in Blacksburg, I'm going with the Hokies by 20. ACC game in primetime on ABC. Georgia Tech heads to Clemson, where the Tigers are 14-point home favorites. Well, Clemson has done a better job each season of containing Georgia Tech's rushing attack, as their yards allowed has decreased each season against the Yellow Jackets since Brent Venables took over. This is the best Clemson front 7 that Venables has had, and I think they frustrate Georgia Tech's offense, force them to pass the football. I'm going Clemson 30-10 as the Tigers get back on track following that loss to Syracuse. NC State heads to South Bend against the Irish. North Carolina State, a 7.5-point road underdog. Notre Dame's rushing attack has been tremendous all season, but in their one loss against Georgia, the Irish struggled running largely because they were facing a quality defensive front. This Wolfpack front is the best they've faced since that game, and I think that helps North Carolina State keep this close. Brandon Wimbush and the Irish passing game have not been good all season. I'm going Notre Dame in this one, but only by 4. And now it is time for what might be the game of the season. Penn State heads to Columbus as a 7-point road underdog against Ohio State in what we're saying might be the game of the year. This is certainly our game of the week. Let's get into it now. Penn State's win over Ohio State last October helped put Penn State back into the national picture. If you ask the Buckeyes, they say they are fueled by last season's loss, kind of some motivation to come out and get a level of revenge. But keep in mind, it was the Buckeyes, not the Nittany Lions, who made the playoffs a year ago. So might Penn State come out and play this game with a little bit of an edge themselves? A lot of people like Ohio State because of their improving offense and a talented, experienced defensive front. But remember, the Buckeyes offense hasn't faced a good defense since the Oklahoma game, and Penn State does have an explosive offense that found success against a Michigan defense that actually ranked better than Ohio State's defense coming in. I think this is going to be an exciting, competitive football game, and time to make a pick. My pick, Penn State comes out of this one with a win.